We are waiting to hear from the 42nd president to publicly address his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. All as Hillary Clinton denies any knowledge of Epstein's crimes after her meeting with Republicans. Watch.
I answered every one of their questions as fully as I could, based on what I knew, and what I knew is what I said in my statement this morning. I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. I knew Ghislaine Maxwell casually as an acquaintance. It was disappointing that they refused to hold a public hearing, so I wouldn't have to be out here characterizing it for you. You could have seen it for yourself.
Criminal defense attorney Ken Belkin joins us now. Ken, good morning to you. So she did post her opening statements on X, saying in part, the committee justified its subpoena to me based on its assumption that I have information regarding the investigation into the criminal activities of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. Her opening statements were about 4 pages, testimony about 6 hours long. And afterward, James Comer said in an interview that it was productive, adding that to some questions involving the Clinton Global Initiative, she told lawmakers, you have to ask my husband. So what's your analysis of what took place yesterday and where things go from here into today?
Well, good morning, Todd and Carly. Thanks for having me. I think, we are going to ask her husband. We're going to ask her husband today. And I think there's a lot of questions about her husband's association with Jeffrey Epstein. We know he flew on his plane many times. We know that Jeffrey Epstein visited him in the White House while he was president many times. I think this begs questions about what he might have observed on those flights, what his conversations with Mr. Epstein entailed. And I think the American people deserve answers to those questions.
Trying to play the chess match here, lawyer to lawyer here, Ken, do you think and get the sense that Hillary is really only there only to establish a baseline of facts that could potentially ensnare Bill in a lie when he testifies? In other words, contradictory testimony among the spouses.
Well, look, it wasn't public depositions, but from what we've heard, it seems she was very circumspect with her testimony. A lot of, I don't recall, a lot of, I don't know, you'd have to ask my husband about that. But it seems almost laughable that she didn't know anything about her husband's relationship, given how many times he flew on his private jet. I mean, I don't know. I think my wife would know, but then again, I'm not the president flying on billionaires' jets every day.
Yeah, so when it comes to these depositions, they're focusing on 5 key areas: how the government allegedly mishandled inquiries into Maxwell and Epstein, circumstances around Jeffrey Epstein's death, how the government can tackle sex trafficking, how Epstein and Maxwell worked with political figures to protect themselves, and possible ethics rules violations by elected officials. And those last 2 appear to be the key. I mean, if you think about Prince Andrew and former UK ambassador to the U.S. Peter Mendelsohn, both were arrested over allegations that they supplied government information to Jeffrey Epstein. So why would Jeffrey Epstein want that information to begin with?
It's really unclear. I mean, he was into a lot of things. We see that from the files and the emails. And one of the things it looks like he was into was compromising powerful men, whether they be from academia, politics, law, technology. But he was into putting men into compromising positions. Why? I don't know. Was he trying to manipulate them? And I think it's important that we get to the question, was a former president manipulated by this man?
Yeah, that definitely is an important question to ask, because former presidents do have a modicum of power. You mentioned the flights. I want to focus on the private flights for a second. If you were deposing Bill Clinton today, what questions would you ask him with regard to his time on Jeffrey Epstein's plane?
What did you do on that flight? What were you doing in those hours that you were on the plane? Were you taking a nap? Were you talking to people? Who were you interacting with? And what were those interactions?
And on the other side of the aisle, House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer is not ruling out subpoenaing Howard Lutnick to testify, because the latest round of Epstein files shows that he has ties to Epstein into 2012. So this appears to be like it could be far from over.
Yeah, I would say it's far from over. His tentacles seem to have reached into the halls of power in a vast array of areas that are crucial to the American economy and life.
And when you hear the Democrats talk about it, many of them voted for the deposition of Hillary and Bill Clinton in order to set up the potential deposition of Donald Trump. We will see if any of that plays out. Ken Belkin, thank you. Great insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.